Welcome to this Exploration event. I'm Ross from Design Council, and for the past year, Design Council have been working alongside our partners, Digital Urban, Commonplace, and the Glasshouse community-led design to undertake this engagement programme for Explore Station. As part of that, we've been working with the British public, inviting them to share their thoughts, ideas, and feedback on Network Rail's new design proposal for small to medium stations in Great Britain. This programme followed an earlier programme called Think Station, and that programme asked what could a future train station look like and what would people like to see from those stations. And the feedback we got from that was that people would really love to see stations taking on a community role, and Network Rail set an international design competition to find a design that responded to that vision. And if you haven't already, you can see and experience that design here today at London Design Festival. We have a virtual reality immersive experience downstairs in the digital suite that is free to attend, and you can put on a VR headset, walk around the station, and see and feel what it would be like to use and be in that station. So do check that out if you haven't already. This is the same virtual reality experience that, along with collaborative design workshops, we took to the great British public, and we received over 4,500 comments, ideas, and pieces of feedback on that design, which has given us a real insight into what people care about in their stations, and also what they expect to see from the infrastructure that we're building. You can see those insights in the Explore Station report here, which we're launching today. And we've also taken some of those key themes to develop this programme that we're discussing this afternoon. So this session today is about participatory design, and that really focuses on something which is fundamental to the Explore Station programme, which is how do we utilise technology to reach and bring these communities together, bring them into the design process, and to do that in a meaningful way. And that means that the outcomes can then reflect what members of the public need and what they want from their stations. So on behalf of Design Council, I'd like to welcome Sahar Khan, who will chair this session. Sahar founded Open-Ended Design, which is a platform cultivating impact-driven works across design, culture, and technology. So thank you, Sahar, for joining us this afternoon. And I'll hand it to you to take on the session.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So how many people here are architects, or is there? Yes. Design? Tech? Oh, awesome. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is a perfect session. So I'm really excited to be here. You already heard what the topic is, democratizing the design process. Of course, the focus is on technology and connecting platforms, and interesting to hear about the work of Network Rail, and some of our speakers have actually worked on this project, so they're going to speak to that. So I'm going to call everybody up, they're going to present, and then we'll have a conversation afterwards. So starting off with Mike Saunders, who's the CEO and co-founder of Commonplace. He said that he actually studied software engineering and physics, and now he builds these incredible digital platforms to connect people and to connect with community and civic issues and ideas. So he's going to talk about that, and look forward to hearing. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. I'm an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurialism is all about iterating. It's about iterating sometimes business model, process, design. And I founded Commonplace really with the idea of bringing that kind of iteration into the public realm for the design of places. So Commonplace is a community engagement platform. It's been used by over 5.5 million people, over about almost 2,000 projects. And the business case for engagements has changed radically over the last few years. So we've had COVID, of course. We've had the government making lots of policy announcements around planning. We've had the levelling up agenda. And so one of the things that we did recently was to do a nationwide survey to find out what the public actually wanted in terms of participation around the development of their place. And we found that people wanted more of a say. 76% of people wanted to have more participation, more influence in their place. But we also found that only 27% of people have actually done that, right? And so when you dig into that in a little bit more detail, you find out that there are three lackings. That's the reason for that. There's a lack of transparency, there's a lack of trust, and there's a lack of awareness. And put very simply, what we do is try and tackle those three things head on. And we do that by creating a digital experience that connects people to the place that they live, work, or play to accelerate positive change. So on awareness, we get 100 times more people involved in the conversation. Okay, some people can't access technology, but there are many more people who can't access other forms of engagement. So that's a really, really important thing for us. On transparency, this is what it looks like. On transparency, we surface information very, very proactively, but we also surface what other people have said. So we see the digital opportunity as a way of having a conversation, of people feeling like they're part of a big conversation with other people who live and work and play in the same area. And on trust, what we really try and do is create a shared understanding of need from the community for the place. And we also create an experience that's very snackable, easy, works on a mobile phone, and most important, is relevant to the people who live and work there. And the way that some digital tools really stand out is in the leverage of the data. So data can provide you with more information, real-time information, evidence, and the ability to make better decisions. So these are all the things that we try and bring out from our platform for our customers. And what you see on the right-hand side is an infographic that has been created from one of the projects that we've run. This is a fantastic way of being able to summarise and play back to the community periodically what they've said, which feeds into the trust and feeds into the transparency of everything that's going on. So a few examples about how it actually works. In Lewisham, South East London, the design process for a master plan in Catford was flipped on its head. Commonplace mapping tool, our community heat map, was used for about 18 months to have a very, very ground-up conversation about what people valued in the area, what aspirations they had. And only after that 18 months was any actual design work done, and it was done partly based on the data that we'd collected. And then when Barratt London came along, because they wanted to build out one of the sites in the master plan, they already had access to this engaged audience who had been part of a conversation for several years. The outcome and planning was very positive for Barratt, and that was because of transparency, because of trust, and because of awareness. Many of our projects are to do with mobility and often to do with walking and cycling. And these the outcomes of these projects can be really huge. A great example is in Waltham Forest, which you can see on the top right-hand corner. We had more than 20,000 people responding to an engagement over several years in Waltham Forest, creating robust evidence that fed into the design work and sped the actual project through. And a study recently found that 42,000 additional years of human life will be created just from the air pollution improvements from that one project. In Leeds, with Leeds City Council, we reached over 100,000 people in a conversation around their public transport strategy. And we've worked with the London Legacy Development Corporation for several years on their master planning. And one of the kind of features of our platform is that it's very visual. We use a lot of mapping, a lot of 3D to try and get across proposals and different stages of proposals in quite a visceral way. I wanted to mention very briefly this project, because the title of this session is about democratizing the design process, that's literally what happened here. So this is a housing association project, and every single resident had a vote on a ballot, and only if the result was in the majority would the proposals go ahead. So we worked as a high-risk kind of strategy for the housing association. We worked very closely with them, and it was critical to have really, really high-quality engagement in the run-up to the ballot, which was successful, as you can see. This is a ground-up project, very, very community-based. Surrey County Council wanted to get ideas for community development. They used Commonplace to source the ideas. We had 66,000 people, 100,000 ideas, and then they used Commonplace to prioritise them. So it was not only crowdsourced, but it was also crowd prioritised. And then the winning ideas were funded and are now being built. And then finally, Explore Station, which we're really, really proud of being a partner of, I think has been a phenomenal success. And I think Design Council and Network Rail are very, very pleased with the outcomes. You're going to hear more about it from other people, but we think, and I think as a whole team, that this is a kind of blueprint for how this kind of infrastructure design could be done in a way that really makes these assets community assets of the future. So that's it from me. Look forward to your questions later. Just to summarise, what we try and do is to solve those problems of trust, transparency, and awareness.
Thank you. It's also, I was thinking, like, how often are we even asked, like, if we care about something? And just that kind of conversation is probably really empowering. Okay, how many people here are into gaming? Does any of you play games? Yes. Anyone uses gaming platforms for your work or anything else? Cool. Okay, great. So we next up have Simon Blakeney, who is, no, wrong person. Should I go to Sahar first? Where's Gonzalo? Sahar? Okay, Sahar. So Sahar is a computational designer, architect. She runs and founded Arki, and she's also working with Network Rail on building out new metaverse-based platforms through her work, and she's going to talk a lot more about this, so also relevant to the gamers in the room, but from a very different perspective. She's an architect, did her foundation course in art at CSM, so really curious to hear her speak about her work. Welcome, Sahar.
Hi everyone, so my name's Sahar. I'm the founder of Arki, which is essentially an augmented reality platform that helps 3D designers visualize on top of the real world. So coming from a background in architecture and gaming, I often wondered why architectural design couldn't be more like games development, from open source code to sharing knowledge between engineers to real-time render engine built for design exploration. And multiplayer experiences that fuel social interaction. The games industry, I think, have pretty much mastered the art of digital democratization. Platforms like Minecraft, Pokemon Go, and Second Life are all really great examples on how we create, explore, and build new realities in gaming, but very rarely do we deploy similar tech that has the potential to change the way we create and experience the city. So technologies like augmented reality have real potential to create, they open up a whole host of new possibilities in the subject of design democratization. And that's exactly what we've intended to create within the Arki platform, a place where designers can openly create, build, and share experiences that's not just limited to their computer screen. So over the last 4 years, we've worked with several architectural schools, developers, and studios to explore how augmented reality can be used as a design tool for communicating future projects. At Parsons School of Design, students used Arki to create digital spatial narratives, where they're essentially superimposing 3D models across various locations in the city. So here, these projects are looking at using AR as both an artistic medium and a design tool. But by using AR, students are able to really easily understand how their ideas impact the city and how to iterate their projects in relation to the urban environment. With Network Rail, we built and released several case studies looking at how augmented reality can revolutionize the way Network Rail communicates with their stakeholders. So the next-gen railway footbridges was released to the public in AR to allow project sponsors across Network Rail an easy way of visualizing footbridges at various stations across the UK. The catalogue was designed by several different architects, and to bring these projects to life, we built several interactive features within Archi that allows users to animate, explode, scale, and even texture these footbridges on site. So this year we're pushing the boundaries of design democratization. And actually, moved on to the wrong one, but this one is at Paddington. We created a prototype to visualize the new wayfinding signage being developed by Network Rail. So in this project, we're exploring how future stations can be easily modified by using augmented reality as a tool that allows station managers an intuitive way of visualizing wayfinding signage on site and essentially helping them to make informed decisions. So the hub station is Network Rail's new station design. And this year we're aiming to push the boundaries of design democratization. The hub station was designed by 7N Architects as a kit of parts. And in Archi, we have been building an interactive feature that allows the general public to create their own station designs from the kit of parts models. So the project basically simulates a gameplay experience where users can create their own stations, and we're essentially hoping that it will encourage the local community to engage further with their station architecture and providing Network Rail a platform to iterate their ideas and discuss future projects. That's it from me. I hope I've given you guys a good insight in how you can use AR in your own work.
Okay, now for Simon. You may now come up, Simon. So Simon is a technical account manager at Epic Games, and he works with architectural practices specifically to help them to use the ecosystem to build new worlds in the metaverse, which is super interesting, and also is a VR expert.
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. At Epic Games, we are building for the future, empowering our customers with the creative tools that they need. Many of you will be familiar with Epic Games due to Fortnite, but we have, sorry, let me just get the slide over. We have 350 million registered Fortnite accounts, 12.3 million concurrent players, and 3.2 billion hours played. But what you might not realise is that the same tools that we use to create Fortnite is also available to everyone. And this is where the creator ecosystem comes into play. And one of the biggest components of that is Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine is used across industries to tackle some of the world's biggest creative and interactive challenges. It's used in the film industry for virtual set replacements. It's used in automotive industries for online configurators. And it's used for training applications to help emergency services plan in safety before being deployed. So as a technical account manager, I get to see the inspirational usage of our creator ecosystem on a daily basis. And I have to say, we see people pushing the technological boundaries continuously. It's very, very impressive. Our customers use our tools for developing high-fidelity architectural visualizations and animations to help communicate design concepts. These visuals can form an integral part of public consultations. But they can also go much further than this. Our tools allow people to add interactivity and gaming mechanics. They can, for instance, plan how to have vehicles and materials moving around a construction phase, or create public consultation interactives that respond dynamically to user choices, movements, and actions. They can embed solutions to engineering challenges such as line-of-sight analysis, solar analysis, crowd flow evacuations, and computational fluid dynamics. Real estate companies can develop digital previews of apartments before anything has been built on site, which can be the threaded then into virtual reality and other such mediums. Once you have a 3D representation of your environment in the engine, this can be enriched with live sensor data, open datasets via REST APIs, and historical information to form digital twin solutions. That's with the freedom to add in user-generated data. This allows us to see applications surrounding facility management operations. It allows you to enable predictive maintenance and also simulate scenarios. So the future of the metaverse is 3D, and it will be real-time. The metaverse does not currently exist, though, and many people believe that it might take 10 to 15 years until we actually see the full formation of the metaverse. We see many proof of concepts. Minecraft, Roblox, Fortnite are considered among those within the gaming industry, but we're also seeing many explorations of what the metaverse may look like for architecture. And here are some examples of those. So we've seen the first NFT house sold for $500,000, powered by Unreal. We've seen Sahar developing a metaverse city where people can buy plots of land with cryptocurrency. And Cornerstone Land, a hyper-realistic metaverse world where events can be hosted on land, brought and sold as NFTs. And here's a closer look at Cornerstone Land by Zoan. Here we can see they're using the full breadth of real-time tools to make realistic worlds. This is all pixel streamed to users, meaning the content can be delivered to web browsers and devices such as iPads and iPhones with high visual fidelity. And they're also using metahumans, whereby avatars can be created within a matter of minutes at a high level of customization. And finally, here is an example of a project we've been working on for our users. It's called the Matrix Awakens City Sample, and it gives our users a powerful starting position when creating large-scale environments. In this example, which can be downloaded from our website, you can see a city made up of 7,000 buildings, 45,000 parked cars, 38,000 drivable cars, over 260 kilometers of roads, and 27,000 lampposts, among other assets, all running in real time at film quality. Users can navigate around this environment freely. Now just imagine using this environment like this for a design review. Real-time technology fundamentally changes how creativity, innovation, and collaboration happens. It is actively helping to democratize design. Thank you.
Cool. How many of you have used this platform in your work? Okay, quite a few. Great. Okay, so last up we have Torange. Torange Khonsari is the founding director of Public Works, the architectural practice. She's also the course leader for Design for Cultural Commons at London Metropolitan University. Her work has revolved around urbanism, public art, and architecture practice. So she's going to speak to us today about her work in this space. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Oh, I can't see you. So, what is this? Is it this one? I can't even work a button. So I'm actually going to talk much more around something which is more about the role of activism within this kind of context. I'm incredibly untechy, so what you're going to see is something maybe quite different. Sorry, how do I? Yeah, but just to begin with, so as a practice, we've been around since the year 2000, and we did a lot of participatory, community-engaged art and architecture projects. And but at the end, about, 7 years ago, we started to question whether we were actually just moving pieces around, and actually were we really kind of shifting power systems, and were we really doing empowering projects. And this, which is by Kate Raworth's Donut Economics, but it's just as a list in her book, was really pivotal to my own research, where she started to do this 21st century priorities with the earth at the top and power at the bottom, which I think is extremely important, and it's extremely important that the work we do does just shift this notion of power. But what was also very interesting was that there are 3 pivotal systemic institutional structures within which we operate. So when you labor or when you actually work, where are you working? Are you working within the market? So you're actually giving more to that system of privatization and the market. Are you working within the commons and the community? Or at the state level, you might also be working across them, so it's not singular. But I think it's really important for us to think about that. My work is predominantly in the commons in collaboration with the public, but I've realized that actually there's a real issue with this in that you need financing. You need to fund the commons, and you need more support for a public sector, which, due to neoliberalism, is being relegated more and more. And I'm not going to go too much into that. This is one of our projects for the Venice Biennale in the last architecture one. So what are you participating to contribute to? Because if you're just doing consultation and participating to keep the powerful powerful, then is that democratic? It's a question. I'm not being judgmental. So if we're thinking about citizen power, how do we actually create that? And don't we have to start to do power mappings within our projects to see where those shifts start to happen? So, and also we need imagination. So one of my biggest kind of critique of the metaverse, the way I've seen it develop in the last 18 months that I've engaged with that, is that if we replicate this world, which is already problematic in its inequality, in the metaverse again, then what are we doing? We're just replicating some of those problems. So I think we need to kind of think about imagination of what is the new world? What are we creating? And another bit that is really important to our work and to public works and also to my research is the fact that public land and common land is in danger of extinction. And it is the ultimate power to have land, right? So actually what we've been doing through our practice has been different tactics to occupy land, like in our Urban project or LJ Works or the Common Room. So several projects where we occupy through temporary architecture, and then through that we develop social and cultural good, and then talk to those who own that piece of land to then to protect it as public land, away from it becoming privatized. I have no problem with privatization of land. I don't like the hegemony of one sector over the other. I think every sector, the community, the private and the public, should actually operate within their own logic, within their own system, and within their own land ownership models. So why did I become interested in all of this? And actually, we have used commonplace in neighbourhood planning. I had forgotten about it. And it was really, really effective, and it was really brilliant, actually. So it doesn't have to, it can also be used within these kind of contexts. So So I became really interested because the commons and the blockchain as concepts very much align. They're about decentralization, they're about peer-to-peer engagement and production, getting rid of the kind of corporations as much as possible and the middle people. They're about network systems rather than centralized ones. They're about governing the commons, not kind of, again, in line with tragedy of the commons, where you have no rules and no kind of modes of access, and then you start to have different, problems with people kind of misusing and abusing that system. But, Elinor Ostrom, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics, came up with governing the commons with 8 principles of how we could govern the commons. So that can be applied to this world, challenging centralization and a decentralized market economy, which I became really interested in, whether we can have a separate economy for the sphere of community. I particularly work with this Metaverse company, and I think, I'd like to focus on one company that I work with, and they are really interested in the relationship between the Earth and the Metaverse. You can buy land which is mapped against the Earth. And these are just 2 projects that we just ran a school with Spheroid Universe last week, so it's all very fresh. But so how do we use the Metaverse as a way to start to disrupt things? So could we have AI as representatives of all wildlife so that they can start to own land in the Metaverse? Could we humanize the non-human through games so the tree cries when you cut it down, or the butterflies talk to you, or I don't know. But I think there is quite a lot of scope with imagination to not just replicate the same. And also NFTs and token holders through DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, could have a lot of voting rights or different kinds of rights, or it can be a way to generate income to preserve the commons in the real world. They can be educational, and where, however, there is huge questions around design ethics. So this is another one that I will quickly talk about, which this is one of my common students' projects, who's a fashion designer, and she started to think about a localized commons within Brixton for a fashion industry, where you start to have a Brixton mill, and I won't go into why that is important, so that the local makers can have control over the production of the fabric, the dye gardens, all sorts of different industries that then you can start to look at, like the Brixton Pound, a kind of local economy, supply chain, local supply chains, and so on. You can have NFTs to be funding some of these things. We just heard, a house went for 500,000. That would go a long way to this for this industry. And Algorand has already started to work with Brixton Pound. And this, it was just, what I like about this is that you don't have to be an architect to design something shitty. And, anybody could kind of design something, scan it, and put it onto the metaverse. And that, for me, is true democratization. If you have to have the skills and the expertise as an architect, and I trained as an architect, then I'm not sure that's really it's going through a filter process. Anyway, I know I'm talking too much, so I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Amazing. So I'm just going to ask everyone to come and sit on these chairs. I don't know if anyone knows the story of these chairs, but they're quite cool. Okay, so thank you guys for the presentations, and I'm sure actually people have questions, but I think it was like a really amazing, spectrum of approaches to what the metaverse means and what it represents. We all know that there's, at this point, multiple definitions of what it is, and also when we speak of what is in the common good, I'm sure for many people on Dezeen, the NFT house was actually of great value and of great beauty, but of course when you framed it around how far that money could have gone in this space, then there's this kind of fundamental disconnect. So my question to all of you is, that is just a real world problem, how we allocate resources to communities versus to fun versus to vanity projects. Is the metaverse just going to become a reflection of the way society and capitalism operates right now? Or do you see the kind of work that you guys are doing specifically as a way of confronting that? Because it is an emerging ecosystem. I mean, I've worked in Web 2, and suddenly we have this opportunity to lean into Web 3 to maybe design with a new set of values. And do you think that that is possible in this moment of time? I mean, maybe we start with Sahar.
These work, right? Yes. I mean, I think what I always like the idea of pushing Ike towards is a place where designers can imprint their projects anywhere and actually monetize, because I feel like that's true democratization when it comes to design. At the moment, it's really difficult for you to find source land, build something and make money from it. But in AR, it's actually very easy to do that. You can create an experience, put it somewhere, as long as you can get traction or you can get people to experience it. There's no way why you couldn't monetize it. So I actually think that's one of the greatest advantages of using AR.
Okay, what about Torange?
We use the same. So I think with creativity you can do it. So in a way you could also create a DAO, where, a set of pieces of land could be owned by a DAO, or it
Does everyone know what a DAO is? Maybe could you just...
Yeah, so they're these horizontally governed, decentralized autonomous organizations, which are mainly on the blockchain. And they're being developed right now, so not right now, but they're being developed more and more right now. But I think there's a huge potential in them. So if the house was owned by a DAO, it could be that as an NFT could be distributed more, and actually more projects could develop. So one thing that we are thinking about is that our NFTs, public works NFTs, could be developed in a way that every project, because they're also done with communities, there could be a percentage that comes to us as a practice, a percentage goes directly to the individual artist, a percentage goes to the community, and a percentage goes to more activist projects. And then if that's organized through a DAO, then the people in the DAO who own the NFTs could decide what activist projects we might do. So there are lots of possibilities with creativity that you can do that. It's just, if we just always think about the same system, that's the thing that I think we should maybe think about more.
Mm-hmm. And of course, allowing people to feel empowered. So everybody's talked about community. I want to come back eventually to the comment on ugly stuff, because I don't know. But we keep talking about community, and you guys have been thinking about engaging with communities, your community of users around the world, designers, and of course through your work. But there has to be a process of also educating and empowering communities. And so I wonder how you think about, especially through your work, you create these platforms and these ecosystems, you push them out, but people have to be empowered then to lean in, to give feedback, to say what they want. How is that something that you work on?
It's a really, really good question. As you said, you've never been asked, or you can't remember having been asked. And I think that's the experience of lots of people, is that they're just not asked. I think what we try and do is to start the conversation very, very hyper-locally, because what people do care about and are interested in is the place that they live and the place that they see every day, where they're walking the dog, going to school or shopping or whatever it is. So start with that kind of hyper-local fulcrum, and then use that as an opportunity for people to talk about what is important to them. And that may be nothing to do with development or the future, or, oftentimes it's about picking up litter or about, parking or whatever it is. But using that as a way for people to start a conversation, which can then progress to, okay, here are some problems, but actually, what are your aspirations? What are the things that you fear or that you want to see in your neighborhood in the future?
Is there a way, you talked about data gathering, to not have to ask people and to do it at scale, and to, look at trends in terms of what people are doing or searching for, or how they're traveling? Is there a reverse way of doing that also and figuring stuff out?
Yes, absolutely. one of the things that we have done is to create a kind of audience on our platform, because it's a very different kind of conversation from the one you might have on other social media platforms. So we have, hundreds of thousands of people around the country who've taken part in a commonplace and who said they want to be notified about other things that are happening. But we also have a lot of data about what they have said, what their aspirations are and their fears and so on. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a big data set, and we mine that particularly in the urban areas, not using personal data, but to find trends. So for example, the government's really interested in brownfield sites around the country. We mined our own data set for all of the comments that people have made on brownfield sites and came up with, the top 5 things that people are interested in talking about, so that when a community is wanting to have some influence over a brownfield site, they can use that as a starting point for those conversations.
Super interesting. Okay, and so
Can I add to that?
yeah, just add.
So I think it's a really good opportunity as well to look at the entire life cycle of the built environment. So not necessarily just for the design phase, but also for facility management operations and how occupant issues can be fed back into the same system. Predictive maintenance, how we can just reinsure the fact that we can predict and mitigate against some of the problems that communities face. And also maybe even the circular economy. So how can we start to track the resources that go into our designs that need to be reused and dismantled at the very end of their life cycle? How do we account for that? So I think we've got a really good opportunity to start to build those foundations now.
That's so interesting. It's actually sort of, I think a lot of the narrative around this is around the glamour and sort of the stuff that's the wow that you showed us, as opposed to really digging into like where are the issues and how can we build around addressing them. So it's really interesting to hear that. And I wonder if there's like a lack of incentives right now. I mean, you guys are creating them to engage in these spaces. But I do have a question for you then. So we were talking earlier, I had a conversation yesterday, I was mentioning with the computational design team at Zaha Hadid, and I know there's all of one architect here, but it is sort of, when you look at design, I'm really curious about how you partner with architects in general, but particularly with these kinds of firms, because they have resource to actually apply to research. It doesn't always have to manifest as an outcome. And also, what are the kinds of questions that they are asking, and what are they seeking to achieve by building in this space?
So it usually comes down to the mechanisms, the technical mechanisms that can enable these sorts of thought processes to become a reality. And I think that's really where we've moved forwards quite significantly over the last decades. We've got these technologies here, we've got the mechanisms, we can bring in open source data sets, we can start to empower users with combinations of information that just wasn't feasible a short time ago. So I think that's really what will make a big difference going forwards.
So can you tell us about your work with Zaha Hadid, or like just one of them?
I'm limited, unfortunately, but so it's, generally speaking, it's the mechanisms. So as long as they know how to do it technically, they use their own research, they use their own intuition to drive forwards the solutions that they believe are useful for their craft.
Right. So what I also understood was that they are sort of questioning who sets the rules of ownership, of design, in a world with no rules. And I wonder, in your guys' work, I wonder, Sahar, how you're considering that is, you have these infrastructures and you're laying out the ground rules, of course, ownership, sharing, monetization, and value setting, and how you kind of confront that, because it's all open field, it seems like.
I think that's the exciting part, is it's non-regulated and it's open source, and we want to push to the fact that there's so much freedom there, so freedom of expression is massive. We're not really regulating it, and there's no one else regulating it either, and I think that's what's exciting, is it's pretty renegade. So to see how people are using these technologies to create new experiences and new environments, I think is yet to be seen, and we're kind of just at the surface of it.
And who are the kinds of people that you're partnering with to consider this right now?
Well, we have thousands of architects using the platform. A lot of the big architects are using it already. In fact, in a conversation recently we had with another technology company, they actually mentioned that a lot of the high design firms choose AR over VR because it really helps them understand and iterate design better than VR can. So there's a lot of architects already using it as a design tool, but I think what would be exciting to see is how architects and how designers in general start to create new experiences that's not just visualization, but actually is kind of participatory and it engages the public more.
Okay, so this brings me to my question on the ugly things is, I mean, this isn't just done for free, right? There are carbon emissions. There is a way. There's time spent, and so as somebody who's worked with public art, you did this incredible installation at Venice last year. You're telling stories. I mean, I wonder how you think about that. Is this space? It's not just a space to make things. There's always a footprint, and how you're going to kind of confront that in your work in this space.
Well, I don't think this works. Well, I think in terms of the I mean, look, it's not my expertise in terms of the carbon footprint of the metaverse, but in a way, I suppose you can start to see that you don't have to produce as much stuff as you do right now. You know, you can use recycled materials to make something small and then make it bigger, you know, in the metaverse. And then, you know, in terms of recycling, which is a real problem in terms of the bigger structures because of risk management or because of, you know, maintenance and longevity and all the regulations that you need in the real world, you don't need to do that. I mean, I'm just aesthetically, I mean, this is I didn't know where you're going with whether that was about a taste question, because I said, you know, somebody could just put everything together. I think, I mean, there is taste and there's aesthetic, and I think they're two different things. So people can have multiple tastes in what they like, and that space should be able to accommodate all of that. The aesthetic, I think, is a bigger question in terms of, you know, there's aesthetic property, which is what that aesthetic is trying to convey, which is also your carbon stuff. There's an experience, how people experience it, and that's subjective because it depends what they like. And so it's a very complex issue, but I think it's a really interesting one because maybe lots of these things can be overlaid in this unregulated space in a way that it can't be because you need planning and so on in the real world. And that would be a really interesting conversation to be recording, maybe, in terms of, you know, a community getting really upset because there's this really DIY building in front of Zaha Hadid's, you know, super slick, whatever. And I think that becomes really interesting. I mean, I'm kind of quite interested in disruption. I suppose I'm interested in the jarring and seeing how that jarring could create new things and create new conversations. I think everything that just is familiar, we need, in order to make new world, being entrepreneurs or whatever, we need to accept conflict.
Okay. Okay. Last question, then I'll open it up. So I have a question for Mike around Network Rail, since we're all talking about Network Rail. Did this experience, like working with them, kind of affect how you see participation, like decentralization conversations in these spaces? Because I'm also curious about, we hear this decentralization of ownership, democratization of design. You're obviously a conduit for it. Do you actually see it happening organically and at scale, given the work that you've just done?
I think is that working? I think organisation. I mean, I think Network Rail has proven by the work they've done in this project that they're taking it really seriously, and you know, many other organisations are as well. There are many private sector developers, many councils, many infrastructure providers are really trying to do it. I think one of the things that I'm really excited about in the metaverse is the fact that there isn't any regulation, and it almost being like a kind of sandbox or a test bed for how things could happen differently, that maybe you can then extract back into the real world in the future. Because I think it is difficult sometimes, you know, with the capital interests and politics and everything else that happens, to really kind of throw it all up in the air and do it in a way that doesn't create massive risks for some of the organisations. So I think I'm really interested in pushing what we can do, don't get me wrong, in the real world, and we'll carry on doing that. But I think there's definitely stuff that we can learn back from the metaverse into the real world, and I think that could be really, really exciting.
That's so cool. Okay, amazing. So I think we have time for one or two questions. Does anyone have any?
Good. Hello, I get to go first. We're talking about participation, so we need some participants. How do you ensure that those participants are as diverse and inclusive as possible? You know, from different backgrounds, different levels of power, different wealth.
I'm happy to go first one. So I think the first thing to do is to monitor it, right? So you need to record that data, which we do on all of our projects. The second thing is to try and work with as many diverse groups as possible, the ground up. So I mean, we always try and identify groups that that live or work in the areas that we're working and work with them if possible. Language comes into it quite a lot, so making everything as multilingual as possible. And I think, you know, there are some really interesting groups and organisations that are focusing on this. I think our starting point is that by doing all of those things, we're improving what would otherwise happen, which is that people would show up or not show up to a kind of drafty town hall, and you know, that would be very undiverse and very kind of monocultural. So we're making progress, but we need to improve all of the time, and doing all of those things, I think, is the way forward step by step.
Maybe one more person.
Yeah, if I can add to that. So I think also accessibility to hardware and different platforms. So if we look at virtual reality, they're still very, very expensive. They're hard to get to unless you're there in a public physical event. So I think being able to target platforms that are everywhere will be beneficial. So web browsers. I think the adoption of iPhones and other devices like this across the world is probably the most prominent. So web browsers seems to be the most vital part there. But yeah, I think accessibility to hardware. Yeah.
Okay, one more question. Maybe on top. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Really, really interesting panel. I really see the utility of digital twins, but then I also see the very interesting emergence of the metaverse using AI. And one thing I had a question about is, I notice a lot of people, just like all sorts of people from everywhere, are making AI images, like with free tools, and they're amazing. So is the AI sort of going to be helping us create different worlds in the metaverse through like just anybody putting in these ideas for the imagery, and then could that help form the metaverse?
Yeah, so you see applications like Midjourney where you can create these images just from text prompts, and it's absolutely amazing. But I think maybe going back to the question of carbon footprints, how much does that cost? That's probably quite expensive. I think we will see more of that technology filter into all of these different use cases, though. The next step may be generating 3D content from scratch or text prompts, and then the next bit might be the design process. You know, how much of that is actually going to be created automatically? So yeah, I think that's a really good question.
Anyone else?
So the way that we're also looking at it is how we can use AI to help designers iterate. So when you have one 3D model and you want to look at different options, how can AI assist you, and how can it help you come up with better ideas?
Yeah, so I think my opinion is that it's going to happen, but I think that it's still very biased. So the imagery, for example, that goes into Midjourney is coming from, a few very specific places. So you'll either see very dystopian gaming kind of imagery, or you'll see like artworks. So I think it's important to keep in mind that it will continue to evolve and feed into these spaces, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not without bias. And I think that this is a much longer conversation around, how are these worlds designed? It's great to have decentralization, and yet we should be considering who is feeding into them in the first place.
Can I just say one little thing about the engagement thing? Because I think until we have everyone who is tech savvy, we do still need to be quite embedded in the real world and be somewhere for a long period of time to build trust, to have people who get left behind to come and engage. And I think that will take quite a while before, like my son's generation, he's 14, he'll probably be completely in that world. But until then, I do think we have to be quite embedded in the real world to make sure people don't get left behind. Sorry, I just had to say that.
Thank you. Thank you guys for an amazing panel. And if anyone has any questions, you can follow up with them.